We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, our India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for making international systems and institutions more inclusive, democratized, participative and fair. Delivers remarks at the third summit of democracy. Asserts India has an ancient and unbroken culture of democracy. World leaders convene for the first ever nuclear energy summit in Brussels to discuss how nuclear power can help drive sustainable development. Antony Blinken to meet with ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Jordan and a top Palestinian official in Cairo as efforts continue to secure a ceasefire, even as Netanyahu tells US Republican senators that Gaza war will continue. Wall Street gains steam as Federal Reserve keeps 3 rate cuts on the horizon, also keeps key lending rate unchanged for the 5th consecutive time. All right, news in detail now. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday emphasized the need for inclusivity, fairness and participative decision-making in international systems and institutions. He said this while delivering the leaders' plenary of Third Summit for Democracy.
In the era of turmoil and transitions, democracy faces many challenges. This requires us to work together. Democratic countries should lead the efforts in making international systems and institutions more inclusive, democratized, participative, and fair. Only through such shared efforts will we be able to fulfill the aspiration of our people. And we will also lay the foundation of a secure, stable and prosperous future for the generations to come.
And calling Summit for Democracy a crucial platform for democracies worldwide to exchange experiences and learn from each other, the Prime Minister reiterated that India has an ancient and unbroken culture of democracy.
India has an ancient and unbroken culture of democracy. It has been the lifeblood of Indian civilization. Consensus building, open dialogue, and free discussion have resonated throughout India's history. That is why my fellow citizens consider India to be the mother of democracy.
And the world's first nuclear energy summit will focus on using nuclear power in sustainable development. Officials and energy executives from all over the world are attending Thursday's summit in Brussels. They are expected to discuss how atomic energy can pave the way for a net zero carbon emissions future. DD India's Ishan Garg has more from Brussels.
The summit is hosting a mix of politicians, scientists and energy company executives. It's being organized by the International Atomic Energy Agency and Belgium, which currently holds the rotating presidency of the European Council. Belgium's Prime Minister Alexander De Croo says an energy crisis sparked by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has emphasized the need for green energy. And the Nuclear Energy Summit will enable partners to discuss ways to harness atomic energy for a sustainable future. The day-long summit will delve deep into the fundamentals of using nuclear energy for civil purposes. Several panel discussions during the day will focus on harnessing electricity from nuclear fuel as well as developing cohesive nuclear policies. The summit comes at a time when countries globally are making big pledges towards net zero carbon emissions. The issue was supported again at the COP28 Global Climate Summit in Dubai last year. India wants to become carbon neutral by 2070, while the EU wants to attain that target 20 years earlier. Financing climate-friendly energy projects such as nuclear-powered ones is a major hurdle for both, though. That conversation is expected to be front and center at this summit. Government officials and heads of energy bodies will discuss ways to finance projects, especially for developing nations. Host country Belgium says the use of nuclear energy will not only clean up the environment but also generate jobs and spur innovation. However, it is going to take a collective effort by the global community to make nuclear energy a sustainable reality. Ishan Garg in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
Well, moving further, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday, marking his sixth visit to the Middle East since the Israel-Hamas conflict began. All right, so the U.S. top diplomat will meet the foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, the Emirati International Cooperation Minister and the Secretary General of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in Egypt on Thursday. The leaders will discuss Gaza ceasefire and efforts to deliver more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Talks on a truce brokered by Egypt and Qatar are resuming this week in Qatar. And earlier on Wednesday, Blinken also met his Saudi counterpart as efforts continue to secure a ceasefire in the Gaza. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told U.S. Republican senators on Wednesday that Israel will continue its efforts to defeat Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The conservative Israeli leader spoke to Republicans via video link nearly a week after the Senate's Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a speech in the Senate criticizing Israel-Gaza conflict. Meanwhile, Netanyahu said in a televised address on Wednesday that preparations were underway for Rafah operation in the southern Gaza Strip. However, he also said that such an action will take some time. Adding further, he said that he will soon approve a plan for the evacuation of Palestinian civilians from conflict areas.
I want you to know that I have already approved the IDF's operational plan, and soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones, as we are preparing to enter Rafah, and this will take a little time. We are continuing to operate in Khan Yunus, in the camps, in the center, in eliminating and capturing senior Hamas officials, as we have just done in Shifa.
Now, several countries have continued to airdrop food into Gaza despite the challenging circumstances. As aid through road and sea routes remains slow, the flights provide a lifeline for a small number of Palestinians in the enclave. DD India correspondent Alex Kadia reports from Jordan.
Well, the United Nations has warned that tens of thousands of people in Gaza could be facing famine in a matter of weeks if things don't change. And like here with the Royal Jordanian Air Force, for days now they have been trying to airdrop supplies into the Gaza Strip. This particular C-130 Hercules aircraft is loaded with 8 tons of food, of baby powder, of anything that these starving families in Gaza could need. But they recognize that this aircraft can only carry about half a truck's worth of supplies. And we know that Gaza needs 500 trucks on a daily basis. So they are doing what they can, but some of the crews operating these flights recognize that this is just a drop in the bucket. Alex Kadia in Jordan, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, the Israeli army found Hamas weapons, money and operatives during their raid at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. The IDF released a video on Wednesday which showed soldiers uncovering rifles and a rocket launcher. The IDF also claimed that over 50 Palestinian gunmen were killed and 180 suspected militants were detained during the raid on Al-Shifa hospital. Israel's raid at the hospital began in the early hours on Monday. IDF said it had sent in special forces based on intelligence that the hospital was again being used by Hamas. All right, updates from Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, a Russian missile on Wednesday hit an industrial area in Ukraine's northern city of Kharkiv, killing 5 people and injuring at least 8 and causing a major fire in a printing house. Kharkiv region, which borders Russia to the north and lies close to the front line, has suffered regular attacks during the war. Rescuers rushed to the site to fight flames covering an area of more than 2,000 square meters. The mayor of Kharkiv, Ihor Terekhov, said 5 others were missing after the strike. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the strike underscored the lack of proper air defenses in Kharkiv.
Наш Харків.
Today, Russia again hit Kharkiv, seemingly unable to affect anything except to provoke a more principled and precise response from Ukraine. 5 people died today in Kharkiv from the Russian missile. My condolences to all the families and loved ones. Necessary aid is being provided to every injured person, but this is not enough. Everyone must realize this. Kharkiv needs an adequate air defense system.
В Харкові сьогодні 5.
Now, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said during a trip to Kiev on Wednesday that a major US aid package that has been blocked by Republicans for months would get to Ukraine and vowed that Washington's support would continue.
We have stood by your side since this war began. We have provided enormous support, and we will continue to do so every day in every way we know how. Now, I know there are questions here because of the back and forth in our Congress in the months that have gone by without the supplemental bill coming through, the package of aid that you rightly deserve and that President Biden is fighting for every day, the $60 billion that the Senate has passed on a bipartisan basis, and now we're working with the House to pass. But from our perspective, we are confident we will get this done. We will get this aid to Ukraine.
And the Netherlands is providing Ukraine with 350 million euros for F-16 fighter jet ammunition and advanced reconnaissance drones, Dutch Defense Minister Kats Ollongren announced in Kiev on Wednesday. At the Ramstein Group meeting of Ukraine's allies, Ollongren said 150 million euros will fund guided air-to-ground missiles that can be fired from F-16s, while 200 million will go to intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance. During the meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, Ollongren said the Ukraine would continue to count on our support.
I think also we always want to show our solidarity also by visiting your country. And I went to Dnipro yesterday also to visit the region and some military facilities there, and to see with our own eyes the great effort that your armed forces are doing and the great courage that your men and women are showing every day in this war. And you can continue to count on our support.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged world leaders on Wednesday to make a rules-based international order work again. In a video address to a global conference hosted by South Korea, Zelensky said many nations and regions of the world would benefit from the restoration of the international rule of law.
A balance between force and rules. And this is what Ukraine proposes. This is the essential core of our peace formula.
Meanwhile, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a telephonic conversation with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday. Two leaders discussed ways to further strengthen India-Ukraine partnership in various spheres. PM Modi called for dialogue and diplomacy for ongoing conflict. PM Modi added that India would continue to do everything within its means to support a peaceful solution. President Zelensky appreciated India's continued humanitarian assistance for the people of Ukraine. The two leaders agreed to remain in touch. Earlier, PM Modi also held a telephonic conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin. India's Prime Minister congratulated Putin on his re-election as the President of Russia. The two leaders agreed to make concerted efforts towards further strengthening the special and privileged strategic partnership between the two countries in the years to come. Still to come in this edition of DD India News Hour. Indonesia's Prabowo Subianto wins February 14 presidential election, winning most number of votes. Election anxiety gripping voters in the US. People stressed with economy, immigration concerns. And young grabbing robot set to clean up space debris. Robotic arm could soon be going into space with an important mission.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Haiti descends into chaos. Who has brought this Caribbean nation to its knees? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. How does the world's largest democracy hold the world's biggest election? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. The United States is set to have its first presidential rematch in 70 years in 2024 elections, with President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump securing their candidature for a face-off. However, voters are deeply divided over who is best placed to lead the country, with concerns over the economy, reproductive rights and immigration at the top of people's minds. Worries over who will win the Oval Office and the lead-up has been dubbed election anxiety by psychologists. DD India's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
There's déjà vu in Washington, D.C. US President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are set to go head-to-head, vying once again for the White House. Last time round, in 2020, so-called election anxiety gripped the nation. For many, those feelings could now be flooding back.
I think that there's multiple layers of election anxiety. Obviously, many people have anxiety over what will be the outcome of the election. But another issue that I see coming up for people a lot is actually just anxiety about election season, because there can be so much interpersonal conflict. So even talking about the election or arguments, or what if they disagree with somebody, that type of anxiety I think is also very prevalent.
Some Americans are seeking ways of coping with the stresses of election season, be it through altering their news intake or even seeking mental health support. Others are taking more drastic measures, with applications for second citizenships really taking off.
There are some people that are looking for a plan B. They are looking for a place where they can relocate. They are looking for a place where they can send children for education. They would like to go for residency or investment program. Among them, the most popular ones are Spain, Portugal, Greece, European options.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic, latitude groups seen a spike in interest from the United States. Managing Director Christopher Willis tells me he's seen an over 300% increase as the country heads towards the election.
Depending where people sit and where their values are, it could be things such as, another mass shooting. It could be to deal with, taxes on the wealthy, for example. There's recent announcements regarding Roe versus Wade, which triggered a lot of people as being a reason why they want to look at different options. So people are just getting nervous in general, and so they want to make sure that if things go a way that they're not comfortable with, they have an option to go somewhere else.
Many clients invest overseas. Others qualify for citizenship by descent. Natalie Bloomberg is looking into her Polish ancestry. Her father moved to the US after World War II. Now she thinks European citizenship could give herself and her children more opportunities.
I love to travel, and so I think, there's this wanderlust, and with the political situation now and people's tensions are up, I always think, well, history might repeat itself, and it's good to have options.
Worries are particularly high among certain demographics. Young people, for example, and immigrants on temporary visas.
More than 2/3 of US adults say the 2020 presidential election was a significant source of stress in their lives, according to the American Psychological Association. The prospect of this year's two-man race, for many voters here, means an all too familiar, anxious road ahead. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for GD India.
And Indonesia's Election Commission on Wednesday formally declared Prabowo Subianto the winner of February 14 presidential election, winning most number of votes. Prabowo, a three-time presidential candidate, is expected to take over from outgoing President Joko Widodo, known as Jokowi, in October. The former Special Forces commander and current Defence Minister Subianto won the February 14 contest with nearly 60% of votes, a resounding win over rivals Anies Baswedan and Ganjar Pranowo, who received about 25% and 60% of votes respectively, according to the official tally of the election body. Now, Leo Varadkar unexpectedly stepped down as Ireland's Prime Minister, saying the country's coalition government would stand a better chance of re-election under another leader. Varadkar's Fine Gael party will open nominations for a new leader on Thursday, with the results to be announced on April 5th. Parliament would then vote on the person succeeding Varadkar as Prime Minister after it returns from Easter recess on April 9th. The shock departure of Varadkar, who returned to the Premiership just 15 months ago, does not trigger a general election. A vote must be held by March 2025. Now, Portugal's president has named Luís Montenegro head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance as the country's new prime minister and invited him to form a minority government. The AD won a parliamentary election on March 10 by a slim margin, far short of a working majority. 51-year-old Montenegro has repeatedly said his party is prepared to govern on its own and will not negotiate with the far-right party Chega to work together. After being named Premier, Montenegro said that the government would be sworn in on April 2nd. And the passage of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's contentious bill to deport refugees to Rwanda may be delayed until at least next month. Unelected members of the House of Lords, largely made up of former politicians and government officials, voted on Wednesday for a second time to amend the legislation to put more safeguards in place to protect the rights of asylum seekers. However, Wednesday's decision by the Lords to reinstate at least some of its original changes means that PM Sunak faces a race against time to make good on his commitment to start the process of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda before June. The UK government says that Rwanda plan is designed to deter migrants from attempting to cross the English Channel, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, to reach Britain. Mexico condemned a Texas law that would give state authorities broad powers to arrest foreigners suspected of illegally crossing from Mexico into Texas on Wednesday. The Mexican president labeled the Texas statute dehumanizing and anti-Christian. Furthermore, he declared that Mexico would not accommodate the return by Texas officials of any migrants to Mexican territory. The Texas law would make illegal entry into Texas a state crime, directing judges to order undocumented migrants to return to Mexico. Now, unrest in Sudan continues as unidentified youth in the Pibor region shot dead 15 people on Tuesday. According to an official, the region's commissioner was also killed in the latest flare-up in the country. Authorities said the suspect belongs to the region's and UAC community. Since the 2018 peace deal, routine clashes among a patchwork of armed groups have continued to kill and displace large number of civilians. DD India's Patrick Oet reports from South Sudan's capital, Juba.
A county commissioner and his bodyguards were killed when their convoy was ambushed on their return from a village to the local government headquarters. A deputy army commander and his close security officials who were part of the commissioner's team also died. Local authorities say 4 people survived the attack but sustained injuries. South Sudan has a very high prevalence of light weapons and small arms in the hands of people without licenses, according to the United Nations. The government's attempt to disarm civilians has not been successful due to civil war in its neighboring countries, which makes it easy for weapons to come into the country. Local government officials say the attackers are suspected to be armed youth in the area. However, no one has yet been arrested in connection with the killings. South Sudan's government says it has formed a committee to investigate the incident. Patrick Oyet in Juba reporting for DD India.
Now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The unrest food crisis persists in Cuba as residents grapples with continuous power cuts and hunger. Cuba is battling its worst economic crisis in decades, caused in part by the COVID-19 pandemic, which saw the flow of much-needed tourism dollars plunge. The Cuban government points finger at US after hundreds of people demonstrate against food shortages and blackouts. A major outbreak in Argentina of dengue, a mosquito-borne illness that can be fatal, is on track to smash previous records, reflecting wider worry around South America, where warmer and wetter weather has led to a surge in cases. Over 120,000 cases have been recorded so far in Argentina in 23-24 season, with the bulk of those in the last 2 months. That puts it far ahead of the previous season, already the worst on record. A junk-grabbing robot set to clean up space debris. This robotic arm could soon be going into space with an important mission to grab old satellites and other space debris floating around the Earth's orbit. The makers hopes to have the ADR junk-grabbing craft to reach the targeted orbit within the next couple of years. Now, Peru discovers ancient sculpture belonging to the largest dolphin to ever roam the waters of what is now the Amazon. Experts said these animals lived around 16 million years ago. The experts say the dolphin is related to the dolphin of the Ganges River in India. All right, we'll slip into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. IAF inducts a helicopter unit at the Air Force Station Thanjavur in Tamil Nadu to ensure availability of sufficient resources. The Indian Coast Guard ship Rajdoot rescued 8 crew members of a distressed vessel after flooding in it. And 5-day annual festival Tepotsavam begins at Tirumala in Andhra Pradesh.
How does the world's largest democracy hold the the world's biggest election. Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. Haiti descends into chaos. Who has brought this Caribbean nation to its knees? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of what we have done so far. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for making international systems and institutions more inclusive, democratized, participative and fair. Delivers remarks at the third Summit of Democracy. Asserts India has an ancient and unbroken culture of democracy. World leaders convene for the first ever Nuclear Energy Summit in Brussels to discuss how nuclear power can help drive sustainable development. Antony Blinken to meet with ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Jordan and a top Palestinian official in Cairo as efforts continue to secure a ceasefire, even as Netanyahu tells US Republican senators that Gaza war will continue. Wall Street gains steam as Federal Reserve keeps 3 rate cuts on the horizon, also keeps key landing rate unchanged for the 5th consecutive time. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to Bhutan has been postponed due to ongoing inclement weather conditions over Paro Airport. It has been mutually decided to postpone the state visit of India's Prime Minister to Bhutan on 21st and 22nd March. New dates are being worked out by two sides through diplomatic channels. Earlier, PM was on a state visit to Bhutan on 21st and 22nd March. And PM Modi addressed a Rising Bharat Summit hosted by a leading media channel in New Delhi last evening. Addressing the gathering, PM said that the government is taking strict actions against corruption, signifying change that has taken place in the last 10 years as compared to the preceding governments which shielded corruption.
Present his thoughts on our principal theme, leading for global good. Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
आज सरकार भ्रष्टाचार पर कड़े एक्शन ले रही है। जो एक्शन लिया उसका हिसाब दे रही है और भ्रष्टाचारी झूठ बोल बोलकर खुद बचाव की मुद्रा में है। तब देश पूछता था कि पावरफुल लोगों पर ईडी, सीबीआई जैसी एजेंसियां एक्शन क्यों नहीं लेती, ये सवाल पूछा जाता था। आज पावरफुल और भ्रष्ट लोग पूछ रहे हैं कि एजेंसियां उन पर एक्शन क्यों ले रही है। ये अंतर 10 सालों में आया है। बात वही है, नीयत सही तो काम सही।
The Indian Air Force IAF on Wednesday said they have inducted a helicopter unit at the Air Force Station Thanjavur in Tamil Nadu. The Indian Air Force said that the induction of the helicopter unit at Thanjavur would ensure availability of sufficient resources with headquarters of Southern Air Command. It would enhance operational capabilities as well as meet the peacetime task of search and rescue, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief and casualty evacuation. The induction of helicopter unit took place on March 24th. The Indian Coast Guard ship Rajdoot on Wednesday rescued as many as 8 crew members of a distressed vessel. The distressed ship IFG Ajmer I had a major flooding at sea approximately 10 nautical miles west of Kundapura off the coast of Karnataka. Indian Coast Guard ship Rajdoot reassured the crew and provided deflooding assistance. After confirming safety of boat and crew, it handed over the disabled boat to Buddy Boat IFV Goldfish for further towing towards Gangoli Harbour. The rescue operation took place on March 20th. Now let's get to the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic election. Conducting polls in India, which has over 968 million eligible voters, is no mean feat. Our next report tells you more about the logistics behind the world's largest election.
968 million. That's the number of registered voters in India. It is more than the combined population of the United States and the European Union. In 2024, nearly 50 countries including the US and Mexico are going to polls. More than 2 billion voters will cast their ballots and nearly half of them will be in India alone. The more you delve into numbers, you realize that conducting general elections in India is a mammoth exercise. India is the world's 7th largest country by land area, comprising 28 states and 8 union territories. The Election Commission will conduct the 2024 general elections to elect 543 lower house members in 7 phases from April 19th to June 1st. The results will be out on June 4th. Over 15 million election officials will be deployed across 1 million polling stations throughout the country. Over 5.5 million electronic voting machines will be used for the exercise. Of the total 968 million voters, 497 million are male, 471 million are female, while about 48,000 belong to the third gender. Also, nearly 18 million voters will exercise their franchise for the first time ever. Let's also take a look at the key statistics of the last Indian general elections that were held in 2019. There were over 900 million eligible voters, out of which 600 million people cast their ballots. The final turnout stood at over 67%, the highest ever for any general elections to date. Nearly 4 million electronic voting machines were deployed across 1 million polling stations, and over 8,000 candidates and 670 parties were in the fray. That's not all. The polls, which cost 600 billion rupees, are the world's second most expensive elections after the 2020 US presidential election.
India's Minister of State in PMO and Bharatiya Janata Party candidate Dr. Jitendra Singh will file nomination paper for Udhampur Lok Sabha constituency on Thursday in Kathua in Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Ahead of filing of nomination, senior BJP leader and Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh offered prayers at his residence in Jammu. After filing nomination, Dr. Jitendra would also address a massive rally at Ramleela ground in Kathua. Filing of nominations for the first phase of the Lok Sabha polls had begun on Wednesday, kicking off the mammoth process for the general election set to be held from April 19th to June 1st. Now, West Bengal Congress President Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary on Wednesday said that the party has decided candidates for 7 Lok Sabha seats in the state. Chaudhary said that a formal announcement of the seats and the candidates will be made by the All India Congress Committee. The Communist Party of India led Left Front has not announced candidates on these 7 seats, indicating an electoral understanding between the Left Front and the Congress in the state. The Trinamool Congress has already announced candidature on 42 seats of the state. As India gears up for parliamentary elections, political parties have started flexing their muscles to give some tough challenge to the opponents. On Wednesday, Haryana's political party Jananayak Janata Party has given a big blow to Congress party in Chandigarh in Indian state of Haryana. Former MLA Rao Bahadur Singh announced his decision to leave Congress and join Jananayak Janata Party. Senior Jananayak Janata Party leader Dushyant Chautala welcomed Rao Bahadur into party. Dushyant Chautala said that many more leaders are expected to join JJP ahead of parliamentary elections for India's lower hours of parliament. Now let's take a look at other stories making news. In a breakthrough, the Special Task Force of Assam police arrested 2 top leaders of ISIS in eastern state of Assam on Wednesday. According to officials, the arrested ISIS leaders were identified as Harish Ajmal Farooqi, who is the head of ISIS in India, and his associate Anurag Singh. India's government-owned bank SBI to share all details related to electoral bonds, including unique serial number, with Election Commission on Thursday. India's Supreme Court directed the bank on Monday to disclose the unique serial number associated with each electoral bond and all other information the bank possesses about the bonds. India's Ojila Pass reopened on trial basis from Kargil to Kashmir side on Wednesday due to heavy snowfall. It was closed since last few months. The border road organization conducted extensive snow clearance operation, as a result of which today the route from Kargil to Kashmir side was reopened on trial basis. The 5-day annual Tepotsavam, also known as the Float Festival, began at Swami Pushkarani Lake in southern state of Andhra Pradesh on Wednesday. Every year, this festival is celebrated with great enthusiasm in the month of March. Alright, still to come on DD India News Hour. US markets closed at record high, easing investor jitters as it left interest rates unchanged. What's expected, we tell you ahead. Double Olympic medalist PV Sindhu, Lakshya Sen and Kidambi Srikanth progressed to the second round of the Swiss Open Super 300 badminton. Details after the break. And India eyed 3 points in FIFA World Cup qualifier against weakened Afghanistan.
Jaipur.
Haiti descends into chaos. Who has brought this Caribbean nation to its knees? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Weather updates now. Italy, Sicily, known for its beautiful landscapes and vibrant tourist attractions, is grappling with a severe drought after lack of winter rainfall. There is an alarming concern the island could become one of the few regions in Europe's red drought zone. While the southern Italian region is experiencing its hottest winter in 60 years and the city of Agrigento is trying to cope with a severe decline of up to 80% in water resources every other day. The regional government of Sicily declared a state of emergency with water being rationed for agriculture and residential use. Long-lasting above-average temperatures looms concerns on impacting agriculture ecosystems and energy production. And after being hit by heavy rains on Tuesday, the authorities have issued an orange alert for heavy storms in Argentina's capital, where floods and heavy winds have disrupted normal life of many. The incessant rain and wind continued on Wednesday, caused delays in international airport of the region, which was under red alert. According to the meteorologist of Argentina, the downpour have dumped 100 millimeters in some localities of the province. Some business updates now. Wall Street's main stock indexes closed higher on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve eased investor jitters by keeping borrowing costs unchanged and reinforcing expectations that rates could be cut as many as 3 times this year. Stocks added to gains after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said in a press conference that despite recent inflation data coming in hotter than expected, the numbers haven't really changed the overall story. The S&P 500 gained 0.89%, while the Nasdaq Composite gained 1.25%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1.03%. DD India's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said on Wednesday that policymakers do still intend to cut interest rates before the end of the year, potentially 3 times. However, the Federal Reserve decided to leave interest rates unchanged at this week's meetings. They continue to study inflation and are trying to get price increases down to 2% in a sustained way without tipping the economy over into recession.
The FOMC decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Our restrictive stance of monetary policy has been putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation. As labor market tightness has eased and progress on inflation has continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are moving into better balance.
Well, major inflation data points such as the Consumer Price Index and personal consumption expenditure were actually up in January and February, which indicates to the Fed that inflation is taking a non-linear path down.
The February number was higher than expectations, but we have it at currently well below 30 basis points core PCE, which is not terribly high. So it's not like the January number. But I take the two of them together, and I think they haven't really changed the overall story which is that of inflation moving down gradually on a sometimes bumpy road toward 2%. I don't think that story has changed.
Well, Powell pointed out their policy's successes, that the economy is strong, the labour market is strong, and that inflation has come down since peak highs over the last 2 years. Well, analysts say it shows the Fed needs a good reason not to cut rates, but it also wants to make sure there's a soft landing. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
And the Bank of England is expected to follow the lead of the US Federal Reserve. The central bank is expected to hold interest rates at 5.25% for the fifth time in a row on Thursday. It is also expected to be cautious about signaling when future rate cuts will be, despite lower than expected February inflation figures. The bank has been trying to take the heat out of inflation without damaging the UK economy. Inflation has been gradually falling since it hit 11.1% in October 2022, its highest rate for 40 years. All right, time now for some sporting updates. We'll start with badminton. Double Olympic medalists PV Sindhu, Lakshya Sen and Kidambi Shrikant progressed to the second round of the Swiss Open Super 300 badminton tournament in Basel. Sindhu, who had claimed the title in 2022, beat Thailand's Pornpicha Chokkivong 21-12, 21-13 to set up a meeting with Japan's Tomoka Miyazaki in the second round. And Lakshya Sen, who had reached back-to-back semi-finals at the French Open and All England Championships in the last 2 weeks, outlasted Malaysia's Leong Hun Zhao 21-19, 15-21, 21-11 in 62 minutes and will next face Chinese Taipei's Xia Hao Li. And Kidambi Shrikant, the former world number 1 who had clinched the title in 2015, outwitted world number 24 Chinese Taipei's Wang Zhu Wei 21-17, 21-18 in a 43-minute contest. It was his 6th win in 7 meetings against the opponent. Shrikant, a 2011 World Championship silver medalist, will next face a tough opponent in Malaysia's top seed Lee Zijia. In women's doubles, Tanisha Crasto and Ashwini Ponappa seeded 6th overcame Indonesia's Melissa Trias Puspitasari and Rachel Aliza Rose 21-18, 12-21, 21-19 in the thrilling opener. The world number 20 Indian pair will face Japan's Rui Hirokami and Yuna Kato next. Moving on to soccer now, India will take on lower ranked Afghanistan in Aba town of Saudi Arabia on Thursday in the second round qualifying match of FIFA World Cup 2026. 3 points from this match can take India closer to dream of making it to the third round of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, something that remains elusive ever since their first participation in the qualifiers in 1985. The Blue Tigers will hope to build on their tally of 3 points from the World Cup qualifiers, where they beat Kuwait 1-0 and lost 0-3 to Qatar in November. India will again face Afghanistan in the 4th match day in Guwahati on March 26th. Afghanistan lost both their matches so far by big margins of 1-8 to Qatar and 0-4 to Kuwait. India currently occupies second place in the Group A. Reigning Asian champion Qatar leads the Group A, while Kuwait is second and Afghanistan is at the bottom. And in shooting, Akhil Shioran clinched the men's 50-meter rifle 3 positions competition at the ISAS Dortmund in Germany. He equaled the existing finals world record held by Czech Republic's Jiří Privatsky. Akhil shot 466.1 to bag his second win after he had won last week at the Polish Grand Prix. Ashi Choksi then brought more cheer for the Indian squad, winning the women's 3P with a final score of 464.8. It was a double delight for India in the men's 3P as Akhil's teammate Aishwarya Tomar finished second with 462.9, while Great Britain's Dian Bale was third with 451.2. Tomar had posted the higher qualification score, topping the round with a scorching 596, a point below the existing world record. Great Britain's Andy Murray fought back for a 4-6, 6-3, 6-4 victory over Italy's Matteo Berrettini in the first round of the Miami Open. Murray swatted 9 aces to Berrettini's 8, saved 4 of 5 break points and never trailed following the first set. He is a two-time champion at the event, having won in 2009 and 2013. Berrettini, who was playing on a protected ranking, needed medical attention in the second set after feeling dizzy. Also playing on a protected ranking, Canada's Denis Shapovalov toppled Italy's Luciano Darderi 6-3, 6-7, 6-4 to advance to the second round. An American wildcard Martin Dahm upset Zijian Zhang of China in two sets that went to tiebreak 7-6, 7-6. And host France will play the United States to kick off the men's soccer tournament at the Paris 2024 Olympics after the two teams were drawn together. The game will be played in Marseille on July 24th, 2 days before the opening ceremony in Paris. New Zealand and the winner of playoff between Guinea and the fourth place team in the Asian qualifying competition complete Group A. Argentina, who won the title in 2004 and 2008, were drawn with Morocco, Ukraine and a yet-to-be-determined Asian qualifier in Group B. Two times defending champions, Brazil will not take part in the men's tournament after failing to qualify. In the women's competition, world champions Spain, who will play at the Olympics for the first time, were drawn with Japan, Brazil and yet-to-be-determined African qualifier. Holders Canada will play host France, Colombia and New Zealand in Group A. The US, who are 4 times winners, are in Group B with Germany, Australia and an African qualifier. The women's final will conclude the soccer tournaments on August 10 at the Parc des Princes in Paris.
USA.
Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.